Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. Today we're talking with Annabel Hamilton from B.Sc in the Scottish Borders and Greig Baird, Head of Agronomy Teams Scotland. In this episode we're checking in with B.Sc, which is also an Agrii iFarm, to see how the season is faring so far, what can be learned from the past harvest year, and what are the top tips as we start a busy spring season on farm. So firstly, a warm welcome to you both here on Tramlines. Annabel, perhaps I can start by asking you if you could tell us a bit about your farm.
Yep, Tony, I'm the third generation to farm at B.Sc, which is the home farm near Eyemouth with my parents, Will and Carol. We're situated right on the East Berkshire coast, about 10 miles north of the English border. We farm around 2,500 acres of arable. Some of it's owned, rented and contract farmed, so a bit of a mixture. And we also fatten between 300 and 350 cattle a year as well.
Yeah, and tell us a bit about that fantastic story of how your farm got its name.
So B.Sc, we are situated about a couple of miles from a village called Coldingham, which has a priory. And when the monks lived in the priory, they used to keep their beehives on the edge of the farm, and hence B.Sc, the farm name.
And Greg, tell us a bit about your work. You're covering quite a wide geographical area up there, aren't you?
Yeah, we're based here in Lothian Border, so covering a large geographical area, mainly around the arable and mixed livestock sector. So yeah, a nice area to be involved in. Nice topography, nice yield potential within a lot of the farm. So it's a good place to work.
Yeah, and Annabel, you're one of Agrii's iFarms. How long have you been, participating in that?
This will be our fifth year as an Agrii iFarm, so fifth year of hosting many of the Lothian and Borders farmers to B.Sc, which is a great thing to be part of, and Dad and I thoroughly enjoy having the trials on the farm.
And Annabel, could you share a little bit more as to why you think it's important to be able to host these trials and open your farm up for other farmers to be able to come along and learn from your experiences and what's happened on your farm?
Yeah, I think it's always important to see what other people are doing, even if it is the wrong thing. And that's always been the part of farming I've enjoyed, is that everybody's different, and just because you do it one way doesn't mean that it's the right way, but it's the right way for you. We have quite a sort of microclimate here right on the Berkshire coast, so it's always quite interesting to see what diseases are floating around here compared to sort of a bit further inland.
And Greg, from your point of view, what makes it interesting as an iFarm?
I think as an iFarm, it's part of our network of iFarms, which is great to get some sort of data that we can use to pull apart varieties in different locations within the country. But certainly at B.Sc, as it's sat there on the coast, it is more prone to yellow rust, more prone to mildew. So we do see a breakdown of some varieties quicker than others. So it's a nice microclimate and a nice indicator of seeing some differences in varieties that maybe we don't see on other sites.
Annabel, you've entered the Farmers Weekly Awards. I believe the last entry was for Mixed Farm. Tell us a bit about those awards, because before we came on air, so to speak, you were talking about how you do strive for those events. Why would you do that? Put yourself through that scrutiny?
Yeah, again, firm believer of putting yourself out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it is good to sweat behind the collar every now and again. And I think some people think some awards, it's showing off, but it's really not. And, we get just as much out of it as the judges who come and had a look around. And also, sometimes it can kind of not bring you back down to earth, but can kind of, make you think a little bit more about what you're doing. And actually, is our business as resilient as we think it is? For Dad and I, it really did kind of make us ask ourselves a few questions. Are we heading down the right road? So it's made us more resilient, probably, I'd say.
That's really interesting to hear, Annabel. So what have you changed on farm over the years to build that resilience?
Yeah, I think not being afraid to say that actually that's that's not the right way of doing something. We're starting to put plans together for sort of another livestock enterprise on the farm, just to bring some more sustainability to the business. We rely very heavily on our contract farming agreements, and with adapting to change, there's something happening every few weeks now in agriculture, and it's just being prepared for that, and just something to get our feet firmly planted into that kind of brings some more security.
Listening to Annabel there in terms of what they are doing on their farm to build that resilience, Greig, what can other farmers learn from this farm in terms of building that resilience looking ahead?
I think one of the biggest differences we've seen is a need to scrutinise, or a want to scrutinise their business. It's a drive in every part of the business to look at margin over input cost. So look into how sustainable is a business, what options are there to try and make it more sustainable. But looking into those, whether it be cropping or whether they look into cattle, it's how can they do it better? And at times I think they are probably, we've touched on the Farmers Weekly Awards nomination. They are doing a very good job, but their want to strive to do better is something that I think every business could learn from. Nobody's perfect, but striving perfection is always good.
Yeah, absolutely, Greig. Annabel, I know that you mentioned you are looking to get some spring barley in the ground. That's what you're busy focusing on right now. How is the farm looking? How are the crops looking?
Yeah, we've actually, we've had, touch wood, a fairly kind winter so far. Winter barley especially is looking, it's pretty happy with the way that's looking. Early drilled wheats for us up here, early drilled is, Greg's going to laugh, is first week in September. We have very little grass weed issues, so, we're quite prepared to get drilling at that time. So keeping pigeons off oilseed rape. A couple of the guys are ploughing ground for spring barley, and then just sort of cattle work at this time of year keeps everybody fairly busy. I'm also 8 months pregnant, so I am and just moved house, so there's plenty going on at this time of year.
And Greig, if we take a step back and look at last year's performance in the trials here on this iFarm, what were the standout moments? What was of interest?
I think yield probably was back on the previous year from this harvest. Establishment was very hard last autumn. We went through probably slightly later drilling than we'd expected in places. So looking back at the results, average yield was back. There was probably significant yield difference between treated and untreated trials. So yeah, probably one of the bigger increases from the treatments over the untreated. So that was nice to see. But the great thing about the iFarm is you can pull out those differences in the weather, establishment, varieties. Not every variety performs the same depending on what the weather pattern is.
Yeah, and what was the disease pressure like last year in the plots?
We had very high septoria pressure, which was evident in a lot of commercial fields as well. Winter barley probably started the year with quite a high disease pressure, which reduced slightly during the year. And oilseed rape, if it established reasonably well, was good, but we probably saw a little bit of sclerotinia just from some of that later rain within them. So yeah, very different to previous years. So interesting.
Yeah. And so how is that comparing to this year? What are you seeing in the crops right now? It's towards the end of January. Annabel, how are those crops comparing to last year?
Yeah, Greig touched on it. Establishment is probably the biggest standout feature. We were a bit later in drilling last year's crops compared to this year's. Greig would probably mention there's probably a bit of disease starting to kick around. But no, as I say, establishment is probably the biggest standout feature.
To find out more about Agrii's summer iFarm events and how to book, visit agrii.co.uk/summer-iFarm-events. So what you're seeing is better establishment, more even establishment, but also the likelihood of increased disease pressure at this time.
Yeah, I mean, we've only really sort of the last couple of weeks started having significant frost because we are so close to the coast. You know, we very rarely get down to -5. We had -2.5 last night, and a couple of weeks ago, down to -4. So, we kind of do, that isn't always in our favour, being so close to the coast. But yeah, we're and as I say, they were, plots were drilled. We do try and drill them kind of on the later half of September, so they're not nearly as early as what we drill them ourselves. But
so, what should farmers be focusing on? What can they learn from the previous iFarm results here, and also take into account as to what they're seeing right now?
I think if we look at the current crop and what we can learn, and it's always good to look back at last season, but I don't think you can farm one season based on the results of last season. You have to look at the averages of a longer term period. There's disease around. It's not hard to find septoria in wheat, no matter the variety, and I think that's quite normal for the Scottish borders, North Northumberland, where we do have a wetter climate, especially early drilled varieties are a lot dirtier. We could find yellow rust within some of the wheat plots at pre-Christmas, just due to that higher temperature and milder weather that we probably saw. Winter barleys at B.Edge look excellent. They've established really well. History tells us that two-row varieties normally outperform the hybrids. However, at this time of year, the two rows do have more disease in them, with mildew evident in quite a few plots. And oilseed rape looks well. There is a touch of light leaf spot and a little bit of foam in some varieties, but possibly more of that to be seen during the spring.
So, Annabel, Greig very neatly summed up how things are looking at the moment. What are your thoughts?
yeah, we've got a long way to go till harvest, and last year we had nearly 120 mil of rain in April, which is quite a significant amount, and the diseases that we can find throughout our crops. We have things in our armory, products in our armory that we can use, and we trust Greig that he he'll take us all the way to harvest.
And so, to ensure success in the performance of those crops, Annabel, what are the next steps? What's your focus on right now?
So we're about to hit February when we can start applying fertilizer. We're also probably over the last few years actually, our nutrition program has become exceedingly important, and Dad and I both see that as a fundamental in our spray programs now, sort of the nutrition side of things. Spray timing's incredibly important. We always have some sort of breeze on the coast. So we probably have 3-4 days spray window compared to sort of more down the south, where you can probably just go out 5 or 6 times. So those timings are incredibly important, and erasing the social calendar for a bit.
Annabel mentioned there thinking about nutrient planning, timing of applications, taking advantage of even narrow opportunities to apply products. Is that a key to success?
Absolutely. I think one thing that we do at the iFarm is we measure and we manage. We will do soil mineral nitrogen testing to see if there is, how much is in the soil, to see then how we build that nitrogen program around the crop. We tissue sample as well on the plot, so we can build that micronutrition program. And Annabel and myself are huge believers that that is where some of the marginal gains are made when it comes to yield. Is in that nutrition. A healthy plant can fend off disease better. And look, we do regular crop walking, regular inspections of the plots and the commercial fields to make sure that we're applying the right product at the right time to target the diseases that are there.
And Annabel, thinking about what you've said already about how busy your farm enterprise is, how important is it to have a trusted advisor like Greig?
It's crucial to our business, and it should be to every other business. When you use any company, Agrii, they are up to date with all the latest information. They are also getting information of what other diseases, pests and things are kind of lurking around. And, the eye is in the detail for us, it is the attention. And, that's what we need. And, regular meetings and phone calls with Greig, so we all know what's going on, if things have been sprayed, if things haven't been sprayed. We've been sent out a plan and we've not been able to do it for a couple of days. We let Greig know, and we can very quickly alter that, and it's kind of the pattern of what we need to be going for. So it's a crucial relationship.
Tell us a bit about the yen and what that means in terms of a group. Annabel, for you to begin with, what is that about and what is it?
Yeah, so Yield Enhancement Network, connecting arable farmers and sort of arable organisations, and it's striving to improve your farm productivity and your performance. It's getting into the nitty-gritty of why is something yielded and why is something not. Throughout the season, you are entering in and sending in tissue samples and other information. I mean, the detail is quite incredible of what you get sent of your crop.
And Greig, what would you like to add?
I think it's been excellent. I'm a huge believer that yield is king within our industry, but it can't be yield at any cost. So as part of yen, there's sort of two parts of it. There is the sort of highest yield achievable, but there's a highest potential yield. So it breaks down every area of the country into what is the sort of highest potential yield. So I'm a huge believer of trying to get as close as we can to that potential yield for the area. But the information that comes back is interesting. It's having a look at how other people, look after their crops and strive for yield versus how we do it. And as we've kind of previously mentioned, I think one of the standouts for us is the nutrition program seems to be delivering that extra bit of yield for us.
So looking ahead to this season and iFarm events, etc., what have you got planned, Greig?
So this year we have our open day on the 24th of June is the plan. We've actually changed things up slightly at the site this year. Our winter wheat plots, we have the full RL trial there, as well as some plant growth regulator trials across the different wheat varieties done in small plots. The winter barley and oilseed rape are put in with the standard farm establishment on broader spectrum plots. So looking at varieties, looking at disease levels, and then we hope to build on some more information around about biostimulants as well during the open day, and we'll be joined by some of our other partners within the industry to hopefully impart some gems of information to our customers.
Thanks, Greig. And as we always do, as we come towards the end of our podcast, we ask the experts for your top tips that you would like to share. And for this podcast, what top tips would you share that could make a real difference when we look at the crop that's currently in the ground?
I'm a huge believer that don't, make some plans, but they shouldn't be rigid. Things will change during the season. The weather is the biggest factor that we all fight against. So yeah, plan, but regularly check. Be agile. Be able to, look at your crops, look at the potential, and drive decisions made on what yield you can derive from those fields.
And Annabel, from a farmer's perspective, what would be your top tips to those listening today?
Yeah, first one, attention to detail. Greig just stole one of mine as well, adapting to change. Don't be afraid that if something's not gone to plan or something comes in and you need to upset things, it's part of farming. And knowing what works in our business, we know what works, so we do it. Just because your neighbour over the hedge is doing something different doesn't mean it's yielding. So yeah, knowing what works.
Thank you, Annabel and Greig, for sharing your thoughts on the season ahead. And don't forget to find out more about your local Agrii iFarms. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. If you have any questions that you would like us to ask the experts, email info@agrii.co.uk. See you next time.